Welcome to the first Watchmen Feedback Episode on TV Podcast Industries. Welcome back, Watchers. This is our first feedback episode for Watchmen Episode One. It's summer and we're running out of ice, or we're calling it the first bulletin of our Atomic Watchers. Yeah.
Yes, welcome, fellow watchers. You are atomic members of this bulletin, or should we say feedback episode.
Exactly. One of your hosts, Derek.
Yeah, I'm one of your other hosts, John.
And without further ado, we're going to go straight into our feedback about this episode. We've talked a lot about this episode already on our first episode that we've already released on our feed, and we want to hear your thoughts as much as possible. We'll have some other things to say as we go through our discussions on this feedback as well. First up, we have a voicemail from Steve Brown.
Take it away, Steve.
Hey guys, it's Steve, and just wanted to was listening to your Watchmen preview podcast and wanted to send in my thoughts and what I'll be doing for y'all for feedback going forward, because I've got my own podcast that'll be covering it. But of course, our deadline is much later than y'all's deadline, so hopefully I might be able to get something into you guys each week as in like an initial impressions or thoughts of the episode. I don't know if I'll be able to break it down to the 5-minute, 4-minute, 3-minute to midnight format that you're looking for. I will definitely try to do that, but I am so jealous, I want to say, of those of you who were able to already watch the first episode of the TV series, because gosh, I'm so excited for this, and I'm glad that your non-spoiler review is that we will be impressed, because I want to be. I want to see where Dr. Manhattan is at this point. I want to see I don't know, Dr. Manhattan, I meant Adrian Veach. I want to kind of see where he's at. I want to see these other characters that we know are still alive. And so hopefully we will get that. Hopefully it will not just be a bunch of brand new people that we don't have any connection to or know anything about. And I'm also excited to see, I did not know from your podcast and even my preview podcast that I didn't realize they are following up from, or Damon Lindelof is following up from the comic book, not the movie. So that does definitely draw some slight different things that might be the world 30 years from the end of the comic is going to be different from 30 years from the end of the movie, because of the difference in the way those they ended. You know, the comic book ended with the squid attack, and the movie ended with just a Dr. Manhattan attack. So anyway, I've run way longer than I wanted to run. I'm really excited for this show, and I will definitely be trying to get something into you guys each week going forward. Talk to you later.
A great way to start our feedback episode. Thanks so much for your voicemail, Steve. And Steve also sent out a quick message after watching the first episode saying, I think Louis Gossett Jr. is going to be Hood Justice. I've just got to reread that trade and see if that might fit. Loads of stuff to break down from Steve's feedback. I know he sent it in before he'd seen the first episode. John, anything you picked out from what he said?
Yeah, I think, we've not seen so much of Dr. Manhattan or Veidt just yet, I think. But I think the thing that I find really interesting here is just how the likes of Dr. Manhattan, Veidt, Rorschach, all those different members of the Minutemen, of Crime Busters, hang so heavy on this modern world, that, has come from that Watchmen influence, the history, the influence that have shaped this world. They really do hang heavy. I mean, even if it's as on the nose as the 7th Cavalry wearing the Rorschach masks.
Uh-huh.
But we do get a glimpse of Dr. Manhattan. And like you, the squid attack, I completely forgot about that in the 12-issue run, being at the end. And so sort of revisiting that and having the squids falling from the sky still, a lot of squid references, really good. So I think that's the thing at the moment that I find really, really good, is just how much of an influence all these different events from the original Watchmen series in the comics hangs and influences and shapes this world, even though we maybe haven't seen those characters up front and personal, except for possibly Veidt, who may be played by Jeremy Irons.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. We still don't know. I did mistakenly say on our first episode about Dr. Manhattan that the building that he's standing at the front of looks very similar to his building from the comic books that's on Mars. Upon watching it again, actually it looks much more like the house that Jeremy Irons is inside of. It looks very like a stately mansion that he's constructed on Mars, and then it collapses in front of him in that footage that's shown on the TV for that split second that we see Dr. Manhattan in the episode. So interesting going back and watching the episode again and picking up some other stuff that we didn't notice before. Steve also mentioned about Damon Lindelof following on from the comic books and not from the movie. It makes a lot of sense. Damon Lindelof has released kind of a letter to fans of the comic book, basically saying he's not going to mess this up. He is a fan of it himself. He got the first 2 issues from his dad when he was a kid and followed him on at the same time along with his dad and loved the book to begin with. And he's trying his absolute best to make a show that lives up to the legacy that's there from his knowledge as a comic book fan, basically. Yeah. I think he's done a really good job already. I really want to hear your thoughts, Steve. I know we'll be following along with your podcast over on Panels to Pixels with Mark Kirkman as well. Definitely be listening to your thoughts as well on what's going on in the show and what you pick up that we may be missing, and the things that we've said happen in the show and actually didn't happen after we rewatched it, in a different way. You also mentioned the possibility of Louis Gossett Jr. being Hooded Justice. That's a really good call out there. The interesting part about the character of Hooded Justice in the comic books is that his identity is never known. And they just mention the fact that he had to reveal his identity to a Senate committee. He decided not to and just took off his mask and walked away. There's an idea in the comic books that he possibly might have died at some time, but that was never proven. That was just a theory that people had about Hooded Justice. So really interestingly, he is a character with a backstory that nobody knows. Nobody knows his real name. People think they do, and there were some people that guessed around his identity. And then on the other end of it, nobody knows whether he's dead or alive or not. People have guessed whether he is or not. So really interesting that possibly Louis Gossett Jr. could be that character. So he plays Will, the guy in the wheelchair at the end of the episode. And he has another moment in the episode as well. So interesting to see where that may lead.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Steve, for your feedback there. Really good to hear from you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hopefully we hear from you again as the second episode airs next week.
Yeah, we also have some email feedback. Remember, you can go to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com and leave email for us. First up is James, who says, "Hi guys. Firstly, loving the new format. I've been listening right back to the pre-Gotham season 1 days, but more recently have always been behind due to the pesky UK scheduling delays. So great to be able to listen to the series in real time."
Wow, James, all the way back to pre-season 1 Gotham, John. Remember we did like 6 months before season 1 of Gotham, which is over 5 years ago. Thank you so much, James. You haven't driven him away.
Absolutely. Thank you, James, for sticking with us. Really good to get your feedback in.
And officially, really this is the first time that we're doing a show week to week that's airing in the UK in the same week that it's airing in the US.
Yeah, so absolutely.
We're really lucky that we're able to talk about the show the way we're doing it as well. This has never happened before. So thank you so much, Sky Atlantic.
Yeah. James says, "I have been looking forward to this one for a while now. Although I do feel there will be inevitable comparisons to The Boys, which jumped in ahead of the schedules a few months earlier and has set a pretty high bar, going straight into my top few superhero series, just behind Jessica Jones season 1. Off the bat, this hit the same levels of darkness as The Boys, although notably without the laugh out loud humor. Instead, going for more grit and tension. I also thought parts had similarities with The Punisher season 2.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly dark, and whether it's the themes, whether it's some of the scenes as well. This is a dark tone to this. The world feels like it's on a knife edge. You can really sense that, for sure. James says, "Highlights for me were the whole cow shootout, interrogations, and generally any scene with Angela, who I hope continues to be a lead character, given her fantastic screen presence and fight credibility. Also, you've got to love her bakery hideout, which reminded me of Arnie's gun shed in Commando.
Fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the bakery's called Milk and Hanoi, referencing the fact that she's from Vietnam.
Yeah, exactly.
And Milk and Honey would be kind of a good phrase for a bakery, right? So I like that.
Don Johnson was also great throughout, and really hoping we get some flashback episodes to be able to have more screen time with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit confused at the 98-year time jump, so not sure how many other characters will be seen in both, but who knows in this universe, and sure, there will be plenty of flashbacks.
Definitely, yeah.
Like the book, it did feel like the kind of show you need to watch each episode multiple times to get the most out of it, with some great Easter eggs and touches. My favorite being the yellow street clean vans with squid logos, given how normal this is seen to be in this universe, and the blood drop callback on the badge at the end. Overall, this was a solid 4 to me, hoping for even more soups in the next episode, and without breaking the tension too much, a bit more dark humor. Jimbo. Thank you so much, James, for that. Yeah, I'm wondering whether we're going to get the humor. I'm not entirely sure, but certainly, it is there. And I do really, really like it, but I wonder how they will, I think it will be absolutely dark humor. But it won't be quite as on the nose as The Boys, to be honest. I think it will be wit, it will be sarcasm, that kind of stuff for sure. Like you, I'm very close to the 4 out of 5 mark for this episode, and I think it really was a great, strong episode. And yeah, that blood drop callback on the sheriff's badge or the police badge at the end, a really nice touch for sure.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it is really interesting, isn't it, thinking of a comparison between The Boys and Watchmen, because The Boys absolutely got comparisons to it when it came out as a comic book. The inspiration is definitely there from Watchmen, and I'm sure there are hundreds of other comic books that you could point to and say they were inspired by Watchmen, but none as much as having the superheroes in the Boys world being bad guys effectively is something that is kind of lifted from Watchmen, but done very differently. I do think there's no real comparison between the two. The comic book of Watchmen is so dense and so impenetrable to somebody that isn't used to reading comic books even. You know, I'd find it difficult to just hand it over to someone and say, read this, it's going to be better than anything else you've read, unless they've read some comic books before, you know. It is very different to The Boys. The Boys is a pretty straightforward story. With this, I just think it's been so long ago since I read The Watchmen, and I read it so often over the years that it feels like something I'm very close to. But The Boys, as we said when we were covering it, neither myself or John had read any of that going into doing the series and covering that show. So this is a very different experience. This is kind of like a please don't mess it up kind of way. Whereas The Boys was like, I'm going to enjoy this. This should be good fun, right? It seems like a wild ride we're going to take for 8 episodes, and it was great fun. This feels like, please don't mess it up. Please just get this right and nail it. And I think right now, only 1 episode in, I'm enjoying it a lot as well.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you. Angela is absolutely fantastic, as is her bakery hideout. I kind of half imagine that she'll come out swirling baguettes as lethal weapons, to be honest. But it's really, really cool. Yeah.
It is really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thanks again, Jimbo, for writing in. It's really good to get your feedback, and I'm so glad you were able to do it this time for sure.
Definitely.
So, welcome to your first feedback on TV podcast industries.
It's so good to hear from somebody that's been following along with the podcast for so many years. Even if you weren't able to listen along the way we were doing it or join us that way, keep sending in your feedback. Great to hear from all of our listeners, obviously. Over to our Facebook group. If you haven't been a member of our Facebook group, we normally do a spoiler post for the episodes as they come out. We put it up about an hour before the episode airs. Once you watch it, you can pop in there and just leave a little note of what you thought. It's just a really quick way to get in contact with us. Come over and join us on facebook.com/groups/TV podcast industries. I'll pop up a Facebook post on the night of, telling you where you can put in your notes. You can spoil anything in there. Nobody goes in there unless they've watched the episodes. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first up, Amy Fitzgerald-Jura says, so many comments. I actually saw this episode at New York Comic Con back at the start of October. Ooh, very cool.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, that must have been great to see it in the big audience, right?
Yeah. New York Comic Con's really great, I find. I mean, we've been there twice. and we had such a great time there.
Such a blast, yeah.
And the atmosphere when you get into one of the halls and you're listening or watching something that's about to premiere, it's a really, really good atmosphere. It reminds me of kind of the cinema, and you get the cheers. You get so much responsive feedback from the audience. It's so cool. Yeah.
And it's cool, isn't it? Because everybody's a fan. So it's like you can hear a pin drop in really dramatic scenes. And then there's other scenes where you can hear people going, oh, when their favorite characters kiss or something. It's kind of really interactive and really enjoyable. I wish they did that more often. Anyway, back to Amy. She says, I think the guy in the wheelchair is the original Hangman. Love the miniseries within a TV show, much like the book's comic within a comic. Once again, another vote there for him possibly being Hooded Justice. That's quite interesting. Two people may think in that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really liking this theory, so I really hope it pans out, to be honest.
Amy also says, I don't think Jeremy Irons is Ozymandias. Didn't Veidt work on cloning in the book? Interesting. Yes, Veidt did work on cloning in the book. I'm going to talk about a little thing that's also been released by HBI, some documents and backup stuff that's in there as well about what happened to Veidt. He was still alive at the end of the comics, so we know that for definite. This possibly is cloning. This possibly is something else. We definitely don't know right now. We still don't know whether Jeremy Irons is actually Adrian Veidt or Ozymandias, as he's called in the comic books. We still don't know that yet. So, we'll hopefully see a lot more of the character. We've got obviously 9 more episodes to go, and this was just a very weird introduction to him. Amy also says, did everybody catch the pirate flag? In the trailer, not in the episode, Jeremy Irons is on the back of a horse going past the pirate flag from the Black Freighter, comic book, within a comic book, effectively the one from Watchmen.
Okay.
So that's another indication that he may not possibly be in Wales or not possibly be on this planet. He may be in another realm or another universe, where this is kind of referencing things that are going on. So we just have no idea. It's just interesting, but I did catch it in the trailer, definitely.
Yeah, that is good. I mean, I didn't see it in the episode, but then if it wasn't in the episode.
I don't think it was in episode 1. It was definitely when he's riding a horse and he's riding past a flag in the trailer. I definitely saw that.
Okay. But again, it's just another reason to rewatch the episode.
Exactly.
Because it may have been. I certainly didn't spot it in the first episode for sure, but, nice spot, if you caught the pirate flag.
If it was in the first episode, yeah.
If it was in the first episode, yeah, absolutely.
Amy says, Archie, Night Owl's ship is back. Very interesting. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I think that Night Owl was Judd in that first episode. So let's see how that pans out as well. We might see a bit more of that in flashback in the future. And finally, Amy says, Looking Glass seems to have many disturbing characteristics similar to Rorschach. I like his costume. I totally agree with you. There's just something about Looking Glass, just with that mirror face
definitely
showing up to people so that they can only see themselves getting more and more creeped out by his questioning. That interrogation scene in that first episode is fantastic.
It's amazing.
And we just didn't talk about it enough on our podcast. It's such a good scene.
Yeah, it's so good. I love the idea that it mirrors the person who's looking at it. And in the kind of interrogation pod, just all the different images. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because you know all the different images are reflecting onto his mask. I mean, I was kind of slightly creeped out because the one that really you recognize was the red, white and black of the swastika flag, from the Nazis, which, I mean, it was just really well done. And, I absolutely love his mask.
Yeah, definitely. There was also Mount Rushmore was showing up with Nixon's face on Mount Rushmore, showing how important he is to the Society of America after not being impeached in this universe. You know, so many different stuff going on in that scene. It was almost impossible to focus on the conversation plus the images that were going on in the background because you're kind of seeing two different worlds in there. Speaking of flags, one of the things that we didn't talk about and kind of missed the first time we watched the episode was that the flag has changed for America. There's 51 stars on the flag and it's all in a big round circle like the European flag almost, but it's 51 stars.
Interesting.
And it's just representing the fact that now Vietnam is part of the US. It's an additional state like Alaska or Hawaii as part of the states. So kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I missed that as well, which definitely means I need to go back and look at this episode again for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the feedback, Amy.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Also, Joel Sharpton over on Facebook says, my initial amazement came at Regina King, the voice of Riley Freeman from the Boondocks, actually being a badass vigilante fighting white supremacists. Yeah, she was awesome. I have to say, I loved that we see her teaching home economics basically at the start, and then we see her going into action, going into her Milk and Hanoi bakery, to get ready to go and kick some ass indeed.
She's awesome.
Smells like bleach.
She's awesome. And you can tell, this was a role that was written for her, by Damon Lindelof after he worked with her on season 2 and a tiny bit on season 3 of The Leftovers as well. I actually have never heard of the Boondocks. I think it's shown Adult Swim, which is an adult cartoon part of Comedy Central, I think, in the US, but it's never made it outside of the US, for us to see it over here, unfortunately. But I love Regina King. I think she's really, really good in this role. Thanks so much for that feedback, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Joel.
Our final piece of feedback comes from Janet Flammer. She noticed cocaine seems much more socially acceptable than tobacco in this universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did notice that as well. We got the chief of police, we got Judd, at a party with kids there, and he's kind of wiping off some coke that he's just taken beforehand. It's a little bit more socially acceptable. There are some reasons behind that. This world is inevitably changed by the fact that we had, these alien squid attacking New York in this universe back in the 80s. So there's been a bunch of changes, and kind of leads me on quite well to just a little bit of post-feedback chat, some other stuff that's come out since we recorded our episode. What do you think, John? Should we go into that?
Absolutely. Let's get into our post-feedback chat.
Yes, Janet Flammer, thanks so much as well for the feedback. That's a great little lead-in, as I said.
Thank you, Janet.
Just after the episode aired, HBO released Peteypedia, a website, a section on their website on hbo.com, where they've put some documents up that just might be of interest if you want to know some more of the background about what's going on in this universe. So just go to hbo.com/Peteypedia, Peteypedia, or pop onto our Facebook group. We have a link in there for it. There's 4 documents available on there for you. The Computer and You, Trust and Law, Veidt Declared Dead, and Rorschach's Journal memo, interestingly. So a couple of interesting points to pull out of this. The Computer and You is effectively about them reintroducing computers to the police department after they were removed. In this universe, there was basically the blame for the attack of the interdimensional space creatures, these giant squids, was blamed on technology. So they removed all the technology from the world. They got rid of all the computers. So
wow. Can you imagine that today?
I know, it's crazy. There's this great conversation where they have the guy who's reintroducing them, the Petey, who's the guy that's writing this Wikipedia type entry, is saying that his partner came on board. His partner was really good at using computers, and he was able to shut down loads of cases within a year. And then suddenly they got taken away, and everybody went back to blaming the police for everything going wrong. So by removing all the technology that was helping them solve crimes, then suddenly the police were hated again by everybody because they couldn't do it. So loads of interesting stuff.
Really interesting, yeah.
But it's the reason that effectively Damon Lindelof has been able to finally get rid of mobile phones from the TV show. Nobody picks up their mobile phone and calls people because there's no network there. All the network that would have been built up because if you had all that technology right the way back from the 80s all the way through to now is gone effectively. So there will be things you'll see that are slightly changed, as we mentioned a couple of times. The electric cars rather than other types of cars, they're all based on technology that was right from Dr. Manhattan's time and all the stuff he was trying to build in the comic books. But there's a lot of changes because everybody blames technology for the introduction of these interdimensional creatures. So I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
There you go. There's a second document in there called Trust and Law, which is talking about Bass Reeves, that character that's in the silent film that's playing at the beginning of the first episode, the one back in 1921. Actually, he's a real life character. Apparently the person that was the inspiration for the Lone Ranger.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So there's loads of stuff in that kind of about the mythology of this Black Marshal, Bass Reeves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very interesting stuff. Read that one. Definitely interesting. And some kind of allusions to the fact that they continued making movies about him and then started basing them around some of the original heroes like Hooded Justice and Night Owl as the movies got later and later in time. So that's quite a little touch, just connecting them all back together. The article about the declaration of Veidt is being dead, effectively. We saw that in the hands of Will in his wheelchair. We saw him holding the newspaper with that headline, Veidt Declared Dead. It's the full story. And actually, it's not saying that Veidt is dead. It's actually saying that the FBI have given up on the search for Veidt and they're going to have to declare him dead to the public. It's expected that it's going to be happening later in the day. They're going to announce that Veidt's dead. The reason why I say that is because there's another article in there, the Rorschach journal memo that's also on this page on Peteypedia. And what's interesting about that is it's an internal memo from this guy Petey to the rest of the police force saying, do not declare Veidt dead because the idea of him being alive is what's holding back the 7th Cavalry from attacking the rest of society. They're kind of scared of Adrian Veidt, effectively. They're a bit worried about what he could do if he comes back and attacks their organization because remember, they follow the teachings of Rorschach and what he's supposed to have done is released the information to the world that Adrian Veidt's the one that brought this attack from space down on them, that he's the one that created it and falsified the whole thing. So they think that he'll come out of hiding and take out their whole organization. So this whole idea of him being alive and just on the run is kind of keeping them in check.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of seeing however many Rorschach masks coming at you would be a red rag to a bull type event for Ozymandias for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It also references the fact that Rorschach's journal was quite popular in the 90s, but eventually, as distance came, I suppose, from the actual event, people were kind of seen as being a bit mental if they believed what was written in the ramblings of Rorschach. So this is why the followers of Rorschach are kind of marginalized. This is why they're seen as being completely opposite to regular people and regular thinkers, effectively. So it does give a good background to who the 7th Cavalry are, even though it doesn't specifically talk about them. It just talks in general terms about what's going on through the history. So
no, it's a great little site to go onto and just to go through some of these documents. It's some really nice background to the series. So definitely check that out.
And I love this stuff. You know, I used to read tie-in novels to TV shows. Definitely when Lost was on the air, I was reading all the websites trying to piece together what was going on. And when you've got a world as complex and deep as the Watchmen seems to be.
For sure.
Suddenly you're seeing things going on. You're going, why is that there? That seems weird. Why are they driving the car that way? And there's loads and loads of Easter eggs coming up. So having a website like this, which hopefully will be updated after every episode with little articles and little things to talk about. And we'll keep talking about them on here if our listeners want to hear us talk about them as well. So, go out and check it out. Really, really good stuff. John, let's close out the episode.
Yes, just the final bit from our feedback episode. It is our Watchmen Pub Quiz, or if you will, the Great Watchmen Bake Off. But I'm calling it the Pub Quiz because it's a series of questions on each of the feedback episodes about that episode that we're giving the feedback on. And this will be over the 9 episodes, leading to a prize that is Watchmen related. So if you want to get involved, you can send your answer to the question each week through email. That's feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And we'll also post the question up on our website as well. So the first question in our pub quiz, in our Watchmen Pub Quiz, name the aerial vehicle that makes an appearance in the first 2 episodes of the HBO Watchmen series.
Interesting.
And of course, the person that gets the most questions right out of the 9 questions will get a prize that is Watchmen related.
Yeah. And if we have more than one, we'll pick the winner out of the hat. Hopefully the questions won't be massively difficult and we'll get loads of entries over the course of the 9 episodes or the 8 episodes of feedback that we'll be doing. That'll be on the last feedback episode that we're doing after we've done all 9 episodes of the show and our feedback episodes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. And as you may have noticed, you have to watch episode 2 to get that question right, because you may not get it right if you haven't seen the second episode. So you'll just be guessing otherwise. So watch the episode, listen to our podcast. We'll have our podcast all about episode 2 of The Watchmen out on Monday, directly after the episode airs in the US, and it's simulcast on Sky Atlantic in the UK. It's still going to be on at 2 a.m., I think, GMT, till 3 a.m. So watch that and then listen to the podcast. We'll be back with our feedback episode, the next one. We'll be recording it next Wednesday. So once you've seen the episode, send in your feedback to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, or follow us on Twitter at tvpodindustries.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, fellow watchers. And we'll be back with some more feedback next week.
Make sure you continue to share the episodes. That's a great way of showing love for our podcast. There's loads of Watchmen podcasts out there. So, I kind of thought there would be. So, we need to kind of stand out a little bit more from everybody else. Share the podcast. Or if you want to support us in a different way, you can go over to patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries and pledge a little money there to support the podcast that we're bringing to you every week.
Yeah. Thank you, fellow watchers. We'll be back next week.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Bye.